Metal Jesus, and I'm back again. Now, a couple months ago, I did a video highlighting some retro gaming magazines that I thought were pretty interesting. And I put it out there, and a friend of mine came over. Her name's Liz, and she's not exactly a hardcore gamer. And sometimes she watches my videos, sometimes not. But she came over and she was like, you know what? I thought that video was gonna be pretty boring and kind of uninteresting. And she actually liked it. She actually gave me a really nice compliment. And usually she would tell me if it sucked. So I was like, woohoo, that's pretty cool, you know? So maybe it's time to do another one. I don't know, I've got another stack of retro gaming magazines here, and I'm gonna go through and show you the highlights, show you some of the cool articles and also some of the really interesting advertisements. Let's take a look. I'm going to start off with GamePro Magazine, October 1991, and why? Well, it's because this issue has so many really cool advertisements in it. And right off the bat, we're treated to a 2-page Toe Jam and Earl ad. This game was super fun on the Genesis, and man, talk about an ad that just captures the joy of playing this game. So good. Turn the page from there and you come to one of my favorite sports games. Now, I'm not a big sports fan, but man, I loved Speedball 2 Brutal Deluxe back when that came out. Well, speaking of violent games, oh man, you couldn't do much better than Smash TV. This is one of my all-time favorite arcade games. So good, so violent. Digging through this magazine, you come across this ad. Oh my God. It's so bad, it's so cheesy, but so 90s. I mean, do you think this kid got beat up quite a bit at school? I don't know. I'm not judging. It's pretty funny to see all these kind of wacky accessories for the original Game Boy. Also flipping through this magazine, I was surprised to see an ad for a total hidden gem, man. This is Vice Project Doom. Nobody knows about this game, but it's actually really cool. But dear God, that artwork, oh, it's terrible. And then finally you flip to a 2-page ad for Starflight. Man, I love this old school sci-fi artwork. It's so cool. This ad tells you how to get your own limited edition of this poster. Oh my God, I would love to have this in the game room. Next, we're moving on to Nintendo Power, February 1995. Now, I chose this issue because in the middle of it, there's this big article about the Super FX2 chip that was coming out later that year. The Super FX chip was a coprocessor that would come in your cartridge that would allow your games to have polygons in it. And that was pretty advanced for the time. Unfortunately, a lot of games were canceled. So this article actually talks about games that either never came out or eventually showed up as a reproduction cart, like this one here. Now I want to switch gears a little bit and show you Sierra Online's Interaction Magazine. This is a magazine that was put out in the fall of 1992, and while I was working there, it's cool to see an article about the upcoming Quest for Glory 1. These are really interesting games, and I would like to cover them more in the future. And here's an article talking about how Sierra plans to use the new CD-ROM technology to put actual voice actors in games. And Sierra was one of the first companies to do that, and they bet heavily on CD-ROM technology. Now we're going to jump ahead to 1996 and show some more Sierra games. I remember when NASCAR racing came out, it was so amazing for the time because it was such a hardcore driving simulator. I hadn't played anything like it. But the funny thing was, I really just spent most of the time driving backwards on the tracks, trying to create the biggest car crashes you could possibly think of. Later on in the magazine, you run across an article about Shivers 2, a game I was actually in, and I didn't expect to find it here. It was actually kind of cool. And if you squint hard enough, you'll actually see me in one of the screenshots. Pretty funny. Now we're going to take a look at Game Fan, their August 1999 issue. And here's an ad a lot of gamers are going to remember. It's the teaser ad for the upcoming Sega Dreamcast console. It's going to be released on 9/9/99. It's thinking. And here is the Neo Geo Pocket Color. This is a handheld I only recently got into, although my screen doesn't look quite that good. And here's an article dedicated to nothing but role-playing games. So many great games in here, including Final Fantasy VIII, Grandia, and so many more. There's just a ton of great stuff to read through here. You know, I really like Final Fantasy VIII. I mean, I know it's kind of the odd one out. Well, you know, actually there's a lot of odd ones. Yeah, I'm looking at you, Final Fantasy X-2. But Final Fantasy VIII was pretty fun. I actually really like the art style. And I would love to check out Thousand Arms. Next up is PlayStation Magazine. This is issue number 8. This came out in April 1998. I was so surprised to see an ad for an upcoming comic, Danger Girl. I actually really love Danger Girl. It's one of my all-time favorites. If you like hot chicks kicking ass and James Bond style, oh my god, it's so good. Later on in this issue, they have this big article about wacky games. They actually list off the top 10 wacky games. So good. I actually want to do a video covering all of these and more, because it's just some of the games that I like the best. I don't know what it is about wacky games. Often they're not very fun, but I don't know. I like games that kind of take a chance, you know? Towards the end of the magazine, you come across this really weird ad for a PlayStation Glove controller. This thing looks so bad, but I don't know, I would love to have it in my collection. Actually, it would make a really great controller for an I Hate You episode. Don't tell Paul. We're gonna swing back to the PC a bit. This is Computer Gaming World, and this is June 1995. Now, I know I've covered Sierra games in this video quite a bit, but I couldn't pass by this classic ad for Space Quest 6. Who doesn't love a spaceship shaped like a jockstrap? Seriously. Here's a pretty big article about Microsoft's upcoming Windows 95 operating system, and specifically what that's going to do for gamers. However, the only downside was that a lot of games ran like crap in Windows 95, at least for the first couple of years. You know, flipping through this magazine, I'm reminded just how popular flight simulators were on the PC back in 1995. It was crazy. But more importantly, the hardware, the joysticks at the time were all about flight sticks. You had Thrustmaster making some really hardcore joysticks that I thought were pretty cool. But my personal favorite, I had the Gravis Firebird, and it was pretty badass at the time. So that's some quick highlights from some of my retro gaming magazines in my collection. I've got hundreds more that I could show you. And speaking of which, you guys know I'm also into music, and I thought, you know, it might be kind of an interesting video to do the same thing, but with music magazines. I've actually got a bunch from the 80s and 90s, some pretty rare stuff and some controversial stuff too. It might be kind of interesting. I'd love to know what you think. As always, I want to thank you for watching my channel, and especially you, Liz, and thanks for subscribing. Take care.